Today is December 5th in the year 2020, and this is NNOA. I'm your host, Captain Rick Wright, historian for the National Naval Officers Association, and we're broadcasting from upstate New York, Marcellus, New York, in the suburbs of Syracuse. Our executive director is Reuben Wright III. Ladies and gentlemen, December 7th, 1941, celebration coming up on this Monday. We will remember the incredible life of Petty Officer Doris Miller this week. As members of the National Naval Officers Association, we salute the historical, incredible attributes of Petty Officer Doris Miller, great African-American messman on board the USS West Virginia. Well, this is NNOA, News, Views, Perspectives of the Sea Services of the United States of America. And today we have a very, very special treat for you. We have probably one of the most prominent leaders in the United States Navy. And of course, this beautiful, incredible person made history at becoming the first female president of the National Naval Officers Association. She's gorgeous, she's beautiful, she's rich, she is an incredible leader. She was born in Jamaica, and she was our incredible immediate past president of the National Naval Officers Association, and Admiral Sinclair Harris had an incredible feat to follow. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go to California and find Commander Denise McCallaCreary, retired United States Navy. Hello, Commander. How you doing on this beautiful Saturday afternoon?
Hello, Captain Wright. I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on board. You have really, as far as I'm concerned, have been really the bedrock of the National Naval Officers Association. I first came aboard in the 1980s. Never forget that great conference in Norfolk, Virginia, the waterside. And you, of course, some of the first people I met in the National Naval Officers Association, going back to the days of Commander Judge Fontroy when he was president. Now, Commander, you were born in Jamaica, the sunny islands of the Caribbean. Tell us about your life. When were you born? Where in Jamaica? And how was life for a beautiful lady like you growing up in Jamaica? Tell us about that Jamaican experience.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. Yes, I was born in Jamaica, Kingston, Jamaica, even though there's a little story. My birth paper up until December of last year said otherwise. I had to get that fixed, but yes, I was raised in Kingston. If we have any Jamaicans listening, they'll recognize the area, the Ligony area. And I spent most of my years from birth to about 15 and a half there before we migrated to Evanston, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago back in 1969.
So your parents decided to leave sunny Jamaica and go to the wilds of the Midwest of the United States of America?
Yes, as a matter of fact, you know, in Jamaica at the time, we had a wave of immigration in that the life, if you wanted a better life, which my parents, I would say, in terms of classes, because we do that a lot, was probably lower middle income class in terms of wealth. And so for the most part, people who wanted opportunity felt like they could do better with their lives in terms of owning a home, which was a number one thing. They felt they couldn't do it in Jamaica, they would migrate. So I was part of that wave of migration during 1969. My mother actually came first. By the way, my mother and my parents are from the district of Boyce Content, St. Catherine in Jamaica. So hail up to everybody from Boyce Content. I usually say if you're from there, that's the only way you're gonna know that place. But in any event, my mother was the first to migrate. She was invited there by a dear aunt who passed away a couple months ago, as a matter of fact, my aunt Pearline Jackson. And they came up, and like a lot of Jamaicans at the time, they were professionals at home. My mother actually managed a dry cleaning branch, but she came up and worked as a housekeeper. Simply, we use the terminology back then, she was the maid in a house. And my Aunt Pearl invited her up, sponsored her. Everybody needed a sponsor back then, which I think you still do.
Yeah.
To the United States. And she came for a year, and she left me with my two brothers and my father for a year. And I was, I guess you could term, the head of household. And after a year, we all migrated up to join my mother.
What a fantastic story. In fact, I learned about the sponsorship and the immigration or migration, that is, to the United States through Bishop Robert W. Jones here in Syracuse. The late Bishop Robert W. Jones is the father of Grace Jones, the great Hollywood actress, and Noel Jones, who's pastor of a bishop, Noel Jones out in Los Angeles, California, and his brother, the Reverend G. Maxwell Jones. And he always told me about, he sponsored many people from Jamaica who migrated to Central New York and Syracuse. Now, how old were you when you left Jamaica and came into the United States?
I was 15 and a half, and you know, the half year was very important. I was in my last year of high school.
Okay, and that's the point I wanted to bring up. Talk about your high school experience. So you did half high school in Jamaica and then finished up here in the United States. Was that the scenario?
Well, I would say I did the majority of my high school in Jamaica. In Jamaica, we're under the British system. So in order to get to high school, you usually take a scholarship, and depending on whether you get full ride or half a ride, you get to go to high school. If you didn't get a scholarship, your parents had to pay, and if they couldn't pay, then you wouldn't go. So I was fortunate enough. I had a half scholarship, and I went to Merle Grove High School in Kingston, which I'm very proud to say I'm an alumni and a founding member of the USA Alumni Association. And I went there from 10 and a half to 15 and a half years. So I went there from first to fifth form and left. I think 3 months into fifth form, I migrated here and went to Evanston High School. And there's a story there in that back then, it wasn't, most of the kids in the high school had not been, in Evanston Township, had not been to high school in Jamaica. And the teachers wasn't familiar how to analyze the transcript for placement. So if you can visualize having 5 years of high school to American school and being placed as a freshman. So I was traumatized, is what I always say, from October to December, January, when we had to get classes for the next semester, and they tried to get me to take all these courses, and I said no. I begged my mother to talk to the school, the staff there, to get my assignment changed, and she said, you're in high school. So I went to Evanston Township just for a year and a half.
Oh God, you're leaving the sunny warmth of Jamaica, and you are now close in Illinois, around the Chicago area, and the weather was different, I'm sure, and you're dealing with trying to get established at all. Okay, so we complete high school. Now there's a great university there in Illinois. What's it, Northeastern Illinois?
Well, no, there is Northeastern Illinois, which I eventually graduated from. Okay. Northwestern is probably what you're thinking of, because it was right down the street from where I live.
Well, anyhow, let's talk about that transition though from high school into college. And you were a business and Spanish major. And how was your college experience there? How did things go? Like you were an incredible student.
Well, it was a little bit challenging because I really knew nothing about the American university system. So I actually picked my university by going down a list of universities in Illinois. And the first one that said Chicago was the one I applied to, because I wanted to go to school in Chicago, because up to that point, I hadn't left Evanston because my parents didn't drive outside of Evanston.
Yes.
I actually selected Chicago State University when they were on the west side of Chicago. Then they moved to 95th, which is the other end of the train. And I used to take the train, well, a bus and a train from Evanston to that school. And as a result of a horrible winter, and my father being late to pick me up from the train station, I took a cab and met a girl who said she was going to a school that was nearby my house, which ended up to be Northeastern Illinois University.
Yes.
So I ended up going to that school, and I graduated from there, a double major in business management and Spanish.
Well, so then you're an undergraduate student working on your baccalaureate degree, and you are now a United States Naval Officer, Commander. How did you finish that great university there in Chicago, then join the Navy, or did the Navy come looking for you? Or how did that transition from that great undergraduate student in Chicago making your move into the United States Navy?
Well, I actually transitioned to the Navy after high school, in that I was looking to get to the sunshine of Florida. And I had, in school, when I was in the high school, a lot of the kids joined the Marines and the different armed services, and some of them would come back and talk about boot camp. And one place they said boot camp was the Navy in Orlando, Florida. So I decided one way of getting to Florida was to join the Navy so I could go to Orlando, Florida. So I did go to the recruiting station and say, hey, I want to join the Navy, but I don't want to be there full time. And at the time they were looking for people to be on active duty. And he tried to convince me and I said, no, I'm not interested. And as I was walking out, he goes, okay, we have a program where you can join for 6 years. And at the time I was like, 6 years, that's like an entire lifetime. But then he,
Yes.
yeah, I could go to boot camp, A school, work 2 months, and then go 1 weekend a year. So I did that. I joined in 1973 in the delayed entry program. So I did enlisted boot camp training while I was starting out right after high school and the early years of college. And then I actually went to the Navy at the end of 6 years being a reservist. When I was, one weekend, my drill weekend, this chief came to me. I remember I was taking this test, which I wasn't prepared for, and he kicked my chair and said, wake up. And he goes, I have something for you. And I'm like,
Yes.
what? And he said, I'm going to refer you for a traveling job with the Navy, because everybody at NAS Glenview, which was my station, knew that I love to travel. And so he recommended me to go work at NRD Milwaukee, Wisconsin for a job there, believe it or not, on this team called the Navy Angels. I went to interview for that job with my modeling portfolio and my long hair. And, you know, I went to the CDR and I was hired as a TEMAC enlisted person, which was a temper active duty.
Yes.
Or they could fire you anytime. So I went to that. I left college. I didn't go to my graduation because it was about 1978 and they wanted me to start right away. So I skipped my Northeastern Illinois graduation and reported to NRD Milwaukee, where I spent a year in recruiting, traveling through Wisconsin, taking teachers to boot camp, EOV, educational orientation visits in Orlando, Florida, doing TV, radio, talking about Navy opportunities for enlisted, because at the time they wanted to grow the African-American enlisted force, and they felt that I could help do that. So I was part of a team of, I think it was like 4 or 5 other girls. I was the African-American female on the team, helping in recruiting in NRD Milwaukee. It was while there, I was convinced, pushed, prodded to apply for the officer program in the Navy, because at the time I was very, reluctant to sign up because of all the racism I had seen happen around me from 1973 to 1978 as an enlisted person. I just thought, getting a commission might not be a good idea. But then once I interviewed and I started looking for civilian positions, I realized that my paycheck was going to be very reasonable as a starting salary because I had 6 years enlisted reserve time. And I applied and came back from an EOV trip, and the CO said, you're accepted, get in the car, head to Newport, Rhode Island. So this was around 1978. When I got
Commander Denise McCallaCreary, you're at Naval Recruiting District, Milwaukee. You are setting the house on fire. You are recruiting, getting the message out, appearing on radio and television. Chicago is a big market. And of course, I did a lot with the CRUPCOM and Naval Recruiting District, Milwaukee in the summers back in the 1980s. Used to cruise on the annual Navy Great Lakes cruise. It was the time out at the Liquid Pier there in Milwaukee. And of course, you take the crew, by the way, to a nice trip to the, what's that nice place called Miller Beer? And we used to carry the crew over there, and Miller Beer would feed them all the beer and everything they ever needed to have in life in Milwaukee. So now you are kicking, you've taken the officer qualification test, you are now off to OCS. Which officer candidate school did you attend?
Newport, Rhode Island.
Oh, you can't get out of cold weather, huh?
It was horrible. Well, I went in the summer.
Oh.
I wouldn't go to any training in the winter. So I went in June. So I didn't have to deal with the cold climate for officer candidate school, thank God.
So Newport, Rhode Island was rocking. You're in OCS. Tell us about your OCS experience, getting ready to be commissioned as an ensign in the United States Navy, coming from the enlisted ranks. Commander?
Well, that too was another challenge, because back then when you went from the enlisted ranks to being commissioned, how should I put it? it's almost like they look down on you. I remember going before an academic board, and the guy on the board said, "Did I come to the OCS with an enlisted man's mentality?" And in my mind, I wanted to say, "What is?" My company officer was there, and I said, "Ma'am, what is the enlisted man's mentality?" I was just so annoyed. So it was pretty challenging being enlisted and being in officer candidate school. And then again, subtle issues of racism. I remember how, I had different challenges, and I remember going to see the seamanship officer, who I was very disappointed because he was from England, and I just thought, being that we had the British thing in common, and he literally looked at me. I had a chief who basically took me in there to tell him that I did not have confidence in myself, that they wanted me to do 2 major exams back to back, and I had to watch the night before, and I said, I can't. And it was one of them that they could have scheduled any other time. So he took me before the guy and said, that I was not trying hard enough, and I thought I couldn't succeed. And I said to him, that's not the case. I have a watch the night before. I won't have enough time to study like everybody else. You can't give me both the seamanship and the navigation exam, or I'm not going to do well on that navigation exam. And he looked at me and said, we have to let you all in, but we don't have to let you all out.
So they were doing everything in the world to kind of wash you out. Let's talk about the demographics of your OCS class. Were you the only female officer candidate?
Oh, no, I wasn't. But, the African-American class was in the minority. And I would say overall, my recollection is, we always got hit for, what should you say, attitude. I'm trying to remember I think it was attitude. We always seem to get dinged for the same ridiculous things, and, had the same kind of challenges. And of course, a lot of us had problems passing the swim test. That's my major memory. I don't remember the total number in my class, but I just remember that the swim remedial was 100 people in it, and the majority were people of color, especially the guys. They had problems floating. So it was pretty challenging. We had to face, the norm of being somebody of color in that environment. Because what I found, and then being from Jamaica, not really at the time, I wasn't raised, with some consciousness about the color of my skin, because it was something I know I couldn't change. And so when I arrived here, just the whole issue of race, being think of as an inferior person, or not having certain skills because I was Black, that was like foreign to me. So I was constantly, reacting, maybe not cooperating as I probably should when those issues came up. So of course I got in trouble, and I reaped the consequences. So I say this to kind of maybe sum up.
Yes, your experience.
That not only did I not graduate with the class I went in, I didn't graduate with the class I was rolled back to 2 weeks. I graduated like the Alpha class for a whole lot of different reasons.
Well, Commander,
I graduated.
That's the key thing I was indicating. So now you are now a new ensign in the United States Navy. And of course, I think in all of the interviews I've done with African-American officers, everybody's always come with the same basic scenario of the difficulties, the barriers that were placed in front of them to keep them from succeeding. But guess what? You succeeded, and now you're wearing the United States Naval ensign gold braid on your sleeve, and you're ready to go. Ladies and gentlemen, this is NNOA, our weekly news, views, perspectives on the National Naval Officers Association and the Sea Services. Today, our guest is the immediate past president of the National Naval Officers Association, Commander Denise McCallaCreary. We've already talked about her beginnings, her humble and beautiful, incredible beginnings of born in Jamaica, migration to the United States of America, finishes undergraduate school, and now she is a new ensign in the United States Navy. Now, Commander Denise McCallaCreary, usually they try to kind of hide African-American officers with that first duty assignment. What happened? Where did they send you after you got your commission?
Well, here's the irony. After being like the Alpha grad, I got the job I wanted, and I got the base I wanted. I wanted to go to Bermuda, and I wanted to be the public affairs officer of the base, and I got the job. And I remember some of my friends, in fact, I had one particular Jamaican friend who said, "You'll never get stationed in that island." And I'm like, watch me. So, and normally too, you get your assignment based on, position that you graduate in the class. So I got everything I wanted. And if you can believe it, a Jamaican getting assigned to Bermuda. How great is that? And then I was the public relations officer for the base. They called it public affairs officer back then. And a lot of other, what we call, well, I won't say, but other officer ensign type jobs, which was great. I was the museum officer. I was the chaplain officer. I mean, a whole bunch of other collateral duties, which as an ensign, you're always assigned.
Yeah.
So I had 2 wonderful years to start my Navy career. I would sit there in St. David's at the restaurant, looking out at the blue ocean. I would go like, pinch me. I can't believe this is my full-time job. And so, and then I met family there. One of my McCalla cousins lived there. And so I had fun. The British officers had a base close by and we had a relationship with them. So on Fridays, I'd hang out with the Brits and, they indulge in cricket and probably equally indulged in alcohol, which I didn't, but they were a good group to party with on the weekend. It was a wonderful tour. I had great commanding officer. I had a chief petty officer that eventually, you never got to pick your chief. I went up to DC and I told them, hey, I'm a brand new ensign. Because you take over some job and there's some already some challenges. So I actually went up to the detailing shop, saw the journalist officer and said, hey, I want to pick my chief because here's my situation. Here's my crew. And the sergeant said, okay, Ensign McCallaCreary will be back in touch with you. And I got to interview my chief petty officer that I was going to get working for me. And I ended up with Chief Jones, who we're friends until this day. He was the speaker at my retirement. And I'm in touch with him and wonderful first tour. If you were to interview him, he would try to tell you that everything I know and became is because of him. And we know the chiefs run the Navy, but.
Oh yes, chiefs run the Navy. Find a good chief, senior chief or master chief, and you'll be all right. Now at Naval Air Station Bermuda, basically aviation squadrons were there.
P3,
wasn't it?
P3 station. Yeah.
So then you in Paradise, you in Jamaica, a great island that the British had at one time, that Lend-Lease program. We ended up having a 99-year lease, the United States, and having Bermuda. Now, is there one really exciting moment as a public affairs officer at Naval Air Station Bermuda that you remember that you would like to talk about, or did anything happen like that for you, Commander Denise McCallaCreary?
Well, yes, there is one thing. I don't know if I should talk about it because you could probably read it, you can Google it, but I think it was the first year, a couple months into my tour, an Israeli ship disappeared out there. And I was the PAO, public affairs officer on the ground, dealing with every newspaper you could ever think of. I remember spending the nights in my office with my pillow on the couch. I mean, 24/7 action. Yes.
Everybody was trying to find the public affairs officer. And those days, Denise McCallaCreary.
Of course, it was a major event because,
Yes, everybody, ship lost in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, Ensign Denise McCallaCreary at that time, the Curry bit hadn't showed up yet, had it?
The what?
It was Ensign Denise McCallaCreary,
right? Right. I left as
the other part. The name hadn't surfaced yet. Is what I'm saying. The Curry part. I mean,
Oh no.
Okay,
years later. Years later.
So now you in Bermuda, Naval Air Station Bermuda. In fact, I had cousins when the U.S. Coast Guard used to fly out from Coast Guard Air Station Elizabeth City to a Coast Guard aviation detachment that was in Bermuda back in the 1950s and 60s at all. Mm-hmm. After Bermuda, it's time to leave Bermuda, the Navy. You join the Navy to see the world. And of course, what's the next stop for you in this?
Well, I had a friend I went to OCS with, Lisa Cheatham, and we had kept in touch. And there was also another Navy Lieutenant Commander Justine Thomas. She came to Bermuda. I was her driver. And she was stationed in Washington, D.C. And Lisa and I, she was stationed in Whitingfield. She was the one who first kind of told me about NNOA, by the way. And so we were talking long distance, and we both decided we wanted to be flag officers, and the place to go to start that journey was Washington, D.C. So she and I both made a point of getting stationed together in Washington, D.C. on our quest to become flag officers in the Navy. Well, of course, by the time, at the end of her tour in DC, she left and went to divinity school. I went on to the postgraduate school and eventually retired. So that dream was deferred in some cases.
Oh, but I think you've had it
realized in others.
So you got to Washington, D.C. You have to
we went to Washington, D.C.
Everybody's having a good time. The uniform looks great in D.C. You're making incredible connections. And by God, this historical career foundation that you're laying is absolutely incredible, because we know what the results is going to be. Major success in the Navy. Now, you have gone to Naval Postgraduate School, which is out in Monterey, California. You also are a graduate of the Naval War College back at Rhode Island, where you got your commission through OCS. Boy, you have amassed an incredible career. Now, out of Washington, what happens next, Commander?
So like you said, I went to the postgraduate school. I was one of the larger classes to go through the African-American officers. And this is where I have to start crediting NNOA, because I did join NNOA while I was in.
Right, let me raise that question there again. Now you have been the immediate past president of the National Naval Officers Association. I mean, at the very top, the CEO of the operation. And now in your advisory stage, a lot of incredible knowledge you have, and decisions also to keep us afloat. And we're coming up 50 years. Now, Commander Denise McCallaCreary, when did you first hear about the National Naval Officers Association?
It was while in Bermuda. I mentioned before, Lisa was a member. If I remember correctly, she was at NAS Whiting Field and they had a chapter. So she told me that once I got back to the States, I should join, but she would keep in touch with me and tell me the different things she was doing as a member of it. So once I arrived in DC, I joined the DC chapter
of the National Naval Officers.
That was about 1982.
Yes, and this is where I come into your story, and that's what I was trying to work towards. I never forget, of course, I came aboard NNOA in 1982. Commander Judge John D. Fontroy, Judge, was the president, and found out I was at Syracuse University, a professor of radio, TV, and film at the Newhouse School. And I was blown away, by the way, the day I walked into that hotel and saw this array of Naval, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard officers. I said, wow. And of course, I had really heard about NNOA through my commanding officer up at NRD Buffalo, who said, I'm going to send, hey, Rick, Commander Wright, I want to send you and Chuck. And Chuck was the only other African-American officer down to the NNOA convention. And I had never heard of NNOA. And I called Chuck Parr, who was a Prairie View grad, lieutenant in the OPO team. And I called Chuck and said, hey, Lieutenant, Commander Wright here, man, what's NNOA? And he started laughing on the phone that day, Commander McCreary, Denise. And he said, oh, that's where all the brothers and sisters get together. That's our organization, and you're going to enjoy it. But again, I get on board the board of directors. I mean, I go from like zero, joining NNOA, Judge John D. Fontroy, he was just incredible. And of course, I ended up on the board of directors, and I never forget those wonderful days. I would come back down to Syracuse, because I was really close to the DC chapter, and I never forget Captain Ed Benford, who was the president of NNOA, and we were meeting over in the Naval Annex, for our board meeting, and I walked in and I saw this incredible, beautiful, smart, squared away naval officer, and her name, I think, was Lieutenant Denise McCallaCreary at that time. I said, wow. I think I probably ran into you at the Norfolk one, 82. Or I think really when I ran into the Navy Annex when Captain Benford was president of NNOA. And we were there working on the weekends and having meetings and deciding on the fate of what we needed to get done from a national level. That was fantastic. So let me just shut up, Commander, because I'm thinking about the very first time I met you, and I was impressed. And also I want to say to you tonight, you've been a big mentor for me for NNOA, and even up to this very day of December 5th in the year 2020. Now, Commander, you're in Washington, D.C. You got to get out of D.C. What happens next?
Well, I want to go back a little bit since you
want to go back to that moment, huh?
Well, I want to go back to, because a lot of times, sometimes we forget the history, and, we can forget to thank you.
Yes.
I do remember when you came on board and joined us. In fact, you were very instrumental in the production of the Meridian, which still exists today. We used to produce it by going to this Greg Black's he had a publishing firm. In fact, he just contacted me the other day. He's now in Savannah with a printing company. But we used to have to go out, write that meridian and lay it out and in order to get it published. And you came on board. And I remember learning so much from you. The other person that was very instrumental was Captain Smith, Duke Smith.
What my
God. Because my recollection is the DC chapter was very instrumental in starting that newsletter. And I remember I interned, he was officially a public affairs, Navy public affairs officer. So I interned, that's I guess the 2020 word, I interned under him to learn the ropes of publishing that newsletter. And it was helpful to have you come on board. I think you came either maybe after or before, I don't remember exactly, but both of you were very instrumental.
Yes. In fact, in my case, when it happened, Judge Fontroy had indicated to me, he said, Rick, we need a newsletter, a good, nice newsletter. And I said, I can do that. And he looked at me real, said, you can? I said, yeah, when I get back to Syracuse, let me just get the word out to all the NNOA chapters. And I said, just send me the photographs and, articles of what is happening with NNOA. And I said, I can put it together. So basically got my students and all up at Syracuse. Then, of course, going back with the board, I was studying in contact with you. Also, Captain Mary McAdams and all. I mean, you all were the bedrocks of the communications with the major efforts of NNOA that helped me get going. And of course, Captain Gilchrist became the next president. He was at Florida A&M. And coming to Washington, just working with you was just incredible. And we got the newsletter going. Yes.
Yeah, well, I think at this point, I was looking at a little bit of our history. I think I've served under just about every president. I counted, I think it was only about 5 of them that I wasn't a member of the chapter.
Yes. In fact, here's one of those early newsletters right here. I got in front of the camera. I don't know if you can see it right.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yes, one of the early ones.
In the picture, but yeah.
In fact, I'm looking at the board of directors here. The board of directors. Let's see, Western Regional Vice was Lieutenant Mary McAdams at that time. You remember Captain Tom McFadder?
Yeah, but let's talk about Captain McAdams. I really want to, again, to give the roses. Now, Captain McAdams, believe it or not, you probably don't know this. She was one of our heroes. She rose as a female officer at the time.
Yes.
She had a job that everybody aspired to be. And she was one of the first. She was the aide to the superintendent. Back then, we called the superintendent of the postgraduate school. So I knew about her as a junior officer, Ensign JG, because it was a very small group of us, and eventually you kind of know everybody. So she was one of our very few senior officers, because when I joined the Navy, the highest rank of most of the female was 04. I can't even remember the 05 or 06 at the ensign, when I was ensign. So when I met her, she was a lieutenant commander, she was the aide, and talk about sharp, and everybody wanted, at least I wanted to be like her, because the aide job was pretty much, if you got to be an aide, you would get to go far. So we met in the postgraduate school, and for years and years, she was one of my mentors until we came to the board and realized that I think I'm older than her, which I'm shocked. Only because she's always been my mentor. But then I forgot it took me like 2 years ago to realize that I forgot that when I got commissioned, I was already like probably 6 years old and most of the people in my class. So I grew up with my class thinking we're all the same age, only to discover a couple of years ago in a conversation with one of our members, we started to challenge him on who was what age. He was like, oh no, you're wrong. And then I had to do some math. And yeah, but anyway, wonderful memories. Mary was pretty helpful in my career. And just to go back to the whole joining NNOA, one of the reasons I'm really passionate, and I've been passionate, but I don't know, 40 years, the number is so big, I probably shouldn't even say it, is really, I don't think I could have accomplished all I have in my military career without the organization. Because really, coming from Jamaica, I didn't have anybody who had joined the American military, and I didn't know anybody, except the few kids at the high school. Most of them, didn't make it through boot camp when they got back there and talking about what went good or what went wrong. So I didn't have a source to go get any kind of mentorship, career guidance. So my my place that I turned to my entire career were the members of NNOA. And a lot of them are still alive. We've lost, you know, many along the way, with the most recent being Captain Percy Norwood, a previous past president. So my history with the organization runs deep. It's personal, it's emotional sometimes, because, you know, they say you're not successful in life without a village. And I consider NNOA as the village for me. And for the people who sometimes, you know, get tired of hearing me, tired of seeing me, think I talk too much or talk less, I guess it's just a passion I have for wanting to see the organization succeed, wanted the organization to be there for the people who are coming behind. And when I say behind, not behind in the sense that they're junior and coming up in the ranks. And with everything that's going on now, which is unbelievable to me, having lived through some of the same thing in the 70s, in and out of the Navy. And when I retired, you know, things are really moving along. We had so many flag officers, so many people in the pipeline. And to see where we are today, both in the Navy and military with our numbers and African-American, you know, senior officers and flag officers, and see what's happening outside, it's a tough pill. And I don't think I don't feel like the work now is in my court. I think the young people coming behind have to take this ball and run with it. We took it, you know, as ensign JGs right up to now, really. So I think the future of the organization rests now with the young folks coming behind. But I just want to definitely, I get that in. I'm passionate because everything I have in my life, I really give credit, because I left right from high school. I worked briefly in the hotel industry, but my entire working life was in the military, and the majority as a commissioned officer in the Navy.
Well, thank God for your life and your endeavors and your contributions to the National Naval Officers Association. And I want to close out your Navy historical timeline and career, because you end up out at Treasure Island, that beautiful island looking at the San Francisco skyline. You also end up at Naval Air Station Moffett Field, where the two big blimp hangars are located. I have some nice history with that place too, and some of the bases. Now, your area of emphasis as a naval officer in your leadership and command positions was pretty heavy public affairs, human resources management, people, and all, wasn't it?
Well, I'm a product of the fleet support, the 1100 community. So I'm a product of the era where women weren't allowed to go to sea, women weren't assigned to ship. It started happening as I was leaving OCS. In fact, the year group, which consists of our only woman who's been deputy CNO and some of the others who are successful today, we came out around 1978, and they were given the opportunity to a few, but the majority of us female at the time were in the 1100 fleet support community. The community started to change as I was approaching retirement. So, you know, there's a split. But yes, I was in command as an 04 at Treasure Island, and that was fantastic, because I think every naval officer who is in a rating, or not a rating, a MOS designator, see, forgetting the words already, a designator that can aspire for command, that's what you want. You want a command. So of course, I was like everybody else, I wanted to command because there were command opportunities as a fleet support officer. And I was very fortunate to do that as an 04. At admin, Moffett Field, where my department head tours, and there's lots of stories there. Some of them I probably can't tell.
Yeah.
And then down to the War College, and then did my joint tour at US Central Command, Senior Staff College in Norfolk. So yes, so in my time, if you had aspirations of going far, basically going to flag, you had to be very smart, you had to work hard, and you had to, you know, as we say, punch the right ticket. So, you know, when I was coming up, it was just very important to be in touch with senior officers, talking to detailers, talking to mentorship, if you want to be successful. So yes, I was very fortunate that, you know, I punched some of the right tickets, so to speak. By the time I got to 05, I got married, I think as a senior. You mentioned about husband, when did he come along? He came late in career, because really and truly, I think I took it to heart. You know, when I first joined as enlisted, they talk about, you know, taking a wife. It was taking a wife. And they didn't expect, you know, we weren't, we were just coming in, being integrated. And I was having too much fun, and I just
too much fun to get married.
challenging.
Commander Denise
Yeah,
McCallaCreary, let's take a little short break because in our next segment, I want to talk about the 50th anniversary of NNOA, and we'll talk about some of the great starlets of our organization and all. But ladies and gentlemen, this is NNOA, our weekly podcast of news, views, and historical perspectives of the National Naval Officers Association and our sea services, the United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, United States Coast Guard, the Public Health Services, and the Oceanographic Administration, all members of the NNOA family. Ladies and gentlemen, this week we have a real special treat. We've been having the opportunity of finding about the incredible life of Commander Denise McCallaCreary, the immediate past president of the National Naval Officers Association. And Commander Denise McCallaCreary, I owe so much to you for my wonderful opportunity of success and having this great NNOA family. As I indicated, I came aboard NNOA in 1982. And of course, Commander John D. Fauntleroy, who was the Superior Court Judge of the District of Columbia, was the president. And of course, I walked in that day and Admiral Lawrence Chambers, the second graduate of the Naval Academy, gave the keynote address that morning, and I was blown away. And also, having grown up in the U.S. Coast Guard and also the U.S. Navy as a native of Elizabeth City, North Carolina, I was enthralled. And my mother, Reuben Wright III, who's the executive director of this podcast, his grandmother, Mrs. Lily Mae Wright, was crazy about the United States Navy and the United States Coast Guard, and she fed many sailors during the periods of racism in the South when the African-American sailors would leave the base. The African-American families took them in and fed them and gave them a place to stay. And if they got a little bit too much of those libations that sailors like, you know, running the ladies to the city, they could come home and mom always had a bed for them to get some rest before she got them out back to the base. And also my father was an electrician for the United States Navy during World War II at the Norfolk Naval Shipyard. But the point I'm making is that I'm there, have found this NNOA family in 1982, Norfolk, Virginia. That summer, I was blown away. And of course, it was NNOA that really got me known throughout the fleet. The newsletter, the early edition of the Meridian, Commander Denise McCallaCreary, it was being circulated all over the fleet. In fact, I think I did about 5,000 copies, and then we got them out, you know, distributed to the fleet. And one day, I just said, okay, the Great Lakes Cruise, the Navy Great Lakes Cruise, that's sponsored by the Naval Recruiting Command and the Atlantic Fleet, we bring up LSTs and FFGs to circumnavigate all of the American and Canadian Great Lakes. Well, public affairs, the community outreach, naval awareness is one of the big mission statements for the Navy Great Lakes Cruise, and also supporting recruiting. Okay, I had been there, let's see, this is 1982, 83, 84, having a ball with NNOA. And then the spring of 1985, guess what, Commander? I got a phone call from Chinfo at the Pentagon in Washington. And I think it was Admiral Garrow, I think was Chinfo at the time. He called me personally on the phone. And he said, Professor Wright, Dr. Wright, Commander Wright, you at Syracuse and the Newhouse schools, I've been reading all of your books, your newsletters with NNOA. And so I'm impressed. I was blown. I said, you were. He said, we want to call you to active duty in our public affairs community to be our embarked PAO on the Navy Great Lakes Cruise. So that first summer of 1985, I was working with Surfland, Naval Recruiting Command, and of course had a ball on board the USS Stark, FFG 31 out of Mayport, Florida. And basically what I'm indicating is that I went active duty every summer, right when I finished up my professor and teaching responsibilities at Syracuse. So what that did, that took me away from NNOA. I mean, I was at sea cruising the lakes when you have the symposiums and all. And then of course, Captain Gordon Fisher became the president of NNOA. And he called me and I said, Captain Fisher, I'm really, the Navy has called me to active duty. So anyhow, that kind of, I got out of the board of directors and all. And really time went by and I kept up with NNOA, talked about it up with members of the fleet. And time goes by. And then to make a long story short, I kept up with what NNOA was doing. I would see meridians. Oh my God, the foundation was laid. The organization is doing wonderful. And then roughly, what, 2016, 2017, Commander Warren Judd, now Captain Warren Judd, United States Coast Guard, was working as a communications chief for President Barack Obama at the White House. And he's an Elizabeth City State alum. I'm an Elizabeth City State grad. And a professor at Elizabeth City State, I came down to do a speech, told me about Warren. I said, wow. So I called the White House and then Warren came on the phone, we started talking. And then he told me he was coming to Elizabeth City Coast Guard Air Station to be the executive officer at the base. And then he said something like, oh yeah, Rick, before I check in, I'm going to go to the NNOA convention at Little Creek, Virginia. I said, Warren, hold it, NNOA? He said, yes, I'm the Coast Guard rep. I said, oh my God, that is my organization, man. I was on the board back in the 1980s, got the newsletter going. I just enjoyed it. What a beautiful, and I got away from the organization. Then of course, being upstate New York and Syracuse, I'm not in Navy country, I'm really out of the loop. And then I said, who is the president? And he said, Commander Denise McCallaCreary is going to become the new president. I said, Denise, like this. I said, what? I said, Warren, please, Captain, I just had to break formality here. Please, when you get to Little Creek, go and find Commander Denise McCullough and just tell her that, you know, I'm alive and we know each other. And I think you know the rest of the story.
Yes, I do. And I remember it well because I was desperately in need of public relations officer, historian, other positions. And Warren called me and gave me a number. And I was shocked because, like you said, I think once I left Washington, D.C. in '85, we never really stayed in contact with each other. So I
lost contact.
Elated. Yeah, I was elated that you were interested in serving again. And of course, as you recall, I was like, come on down right now, let's get going. And ever since you've been on, and I know I was appreciative for my 2 years, and I think our new president, Admiral Harris, is just as appreciative. So we're glad to have you back. And I love your enthusiasm, your motivation. I don't think I've ever talked to you and you're not high and just life and energy. And it helps us, you know, especially, you know, trying to get stuff done in a way. It's nice to have dedicated and volunteers that you can really depend on. So yes, welcome back. And I'm glad.
God works in mysterious ways. And of course, this stage of our life too, and we retired from the university in 2013. And of course, had a son who's become very active with NNOA. And then of course, you were planning the Norfolk, Virginia NNOA symposium, and we were needing technological support along with Captain Francis and all. And you met Ruben, who's now the executive director of our NNOA podcast. And you two are very close. In fact, y'all talk more than I do to him about NNOA business and all. And I'm just absolutely ecstatic. But it's a pleasure to have on board. I want the NNOA family to know on this podcast that my real reason for being back with NNOA is the person I'm talking and having this wonderful interview to talk to this afternoon. My dear sister with the NNOA, Commander Denise McCallaCreary, the immediate past president. Commander Denise McCallaCreary, doing your role, you just as president of NNOA, what were some of your goals and missions? But you accomplished so much. But what's some of the good high points of your 2 years as president of the organization?
Well, I think I want to start by just giving you a little story. It wasn't something on my scope. It wasn't something I'd even thought about. I think I may have ran early in my career at one point and didn't make it. But it's at the point that I decided to run, it was because of Will Watson. Will served with me. He was a lieutenant commander, if I remember correctly, and I was a commander on the board. And I remember he was very supportive. And I remember getting this phone call the year before I became president saying, Denise, I need you. And I'm like, need you for what?
Officer. Oh, yes.
Yeah, and he wanted me to take over the Western region. And I was like, well, I really don't have the time. He's like, look, and you know how we are in NNOA are just necessary. We support each other. When somebody's in need of anything, we try our best to, you know, to give or to follow through. So of course I couldn't say no to him because he really supported me when I was on the board. I've been on the board in various positions. He was the master of arms and you could always call on Will and he was never questioned, he'll do. So I served as the Western Regional Vice President. And when he asked me to serve, I thought it was going to be for 2 years. And December of that year, I was on a board meeting when I got told, oh no, you have to run again if you want to continue for the second year. And I was like, oh no.
Yes.
I was so glad to get off it. And I said, okay, that's it. I'll do my year, because by then, you know, I'd been working so many years. I figured it was time for new blood, new ideas, fresh face. So I decided I wasn't going to run again. And then both he and Captain Flowers, first him, and I was like, no. And Captain Flowers and, you know, Captain Don Flowers, he's been a mentor of the entire African American population for most of us, our entire career in the service. And he lives up here in Northern California. And he started talking to me. And I thought, oh my God, guys, I just can't do this. I was pursuing my career in television commercial and acting. I was doing a bit of traveling. You know, I live in Panama sometimes. And I just saw it as not the right time. But in the end, again, because of my passion and I saw the need, I agreed. And honestly, Captain Wright, at the time I said yes. I wasn't even thinking I would be the first female. And I know people might not believe it, but I've been around the organization so long and there were always males running. I can't remember another female by myself that ran for president the whole time I've been in, and always the male. And it was always too at the captain level. I was surprised when Will got elected as an 05, because that was unheard of even from the early days. It seems like it was always 06 in whatever services. So I was not thinking, so I just said, why not? I'd been around many years, served on just about every position on the board. And I really have been very active, not just that, very active in the organization, been in about 4 or 5 chapters. So I knew what the membership was, what we needed, what we had accomplished, the hard challenges we had gone through, how we had overcome it. I knew most of the president. Like I said, I looked before I came for the interview. I realized I've worked under most of them. So I felt like I knew the organization and I was passionate enough about it that if they wanted me to step up in this role, why not? And I was in full retirement. So I ran, and after I was elected, Will picked up the phone and said, congratulations, Madam President. And I said, Will, you owe me. I also told Captain Flowers, if I'm running for president, he had to run for Western Regional VP.
Yes.
He said, congratulations. The next word out of his mouth was, by the way, you realize you're the first female. And the light bulb went off in my head. I was like,
history was made.
Failure is not an option.
Yes. Well,
that was my approach.
Yes, but absolutely. I mean, this is a wonderful moment, and your leadership has been absolutely exemplary. I mean, it's just a pleasure working with you and still working with you. And of course, our organization is coming up 50 years. 50 years old in the year 2022, and you've laid the foundation, and Admiral Sinclair Harris, our present leader, and Captain Simonia Blanchingame, our executive VP, we had her on last week. We got good leadership, and we're going to go to Annapolis, Maryland, with the summer of 2022 to celebrate the 50th anniversary of NNOA. Commander Denise McCallaCreary, before we let you go this afternoon, I want to indicate, what does that really mean to you emotionally, the 50th anniversary?
The 50th anniversary, well, the 50th anniversary, I mean, basically, we have survived 50 years as a predominantly African-American association, serving all the services, Coast Guard, Navy, and Marine Corps in, recruiting, retaining, and helping officers to, aspire for great leadership position in all 3 services. And I think we have done an excellent job of that. You asked me, when I was president, what were my goals? And one of my big goals was to grow the organization in terms of membership, increase our visibility and our accomplishment among the 3 services, because I think we have done so much over the years to help, again, recruit and retain African-American officers. And I think it sometimes gets lost because we don't do a good job of publicizing our accomplishment. I am absolutely excited about the 50th, of course. By the way, I should mention that our president, he and I were in PG school together. So we were shipmates. I've known him from then.
Admiral Harris.
Yes. And of course, I was instrumental in convincing him because, he works a full-time job. So him taking on the role and running for the office too was a big decision for him. And of course, I think he's doing a fantastic job. He's meeting and greeting and promoting the right objectives for the organization, which is total integration and total contribution to the growth of the three services in terms of increasing the number of African diversity in all three services. For the 50th, we're just going to celebrate. You know, we have survived.
Have a good time. Yes.
Yeah, so we're going to celebrate. I'm not privy to all the details of the planning because I think some of it might be kept from me because I'm just in an advisory role. But
oh no, we're going to need your Captain Robert too.
No, it's okay. What we're hoping for is really everybody coming out to celebrate with us because we feel it's a huge accomplishment to have been able to survive and contribute the way we have contributed to the growth of African-American officers in all three services. It's going to be in Annapolis. I don't remember the date off the top of my head. I believe it's August or July of 2022.
Yes.
Yes. So there'll be lots of information on our website. We're going to make sure we send mailers, promote, let everybody know about it. So and everybody will be invited. You don't have to be active duty, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard to come because we do invite civilians to our events. We figure it's a nice way to showcase what opportunities are available for young people in all three services. So we're going to encourage and we're going to make plans for a huge attendance. We want about 1,000 people there to help us celebrate our 50th year and beyond. The beginning of a new decade where we're going to even be bigger, greater, and better serving all three services. So yes.
Our membership is growing, and also Captain Rick Wright here would like to tell the members of the sea services and even civilians who are affiliated, if you're watching and listening to our podcast, hey, come join us. Join the National Naval Officers Association. This is an incredible organization. And I'm just thinking about to the young junior officers out there. I know we were out in San Diego with our last, before the COVID-19 came along, we had San Diego Symposium. And a young Coast Guard officer who came up to me, really nearly tears in his eye, Lieutenant JG. And he said, my God, I'm so glad I joined NNOA. Who would have thought that I could sit out on the balcony looking at beautiful San Diego Bay at night, talking to the commandant of the U.S. Coast Guard, not for 2 or 3 minutes, but like I had 45 minutes. I had him all to myself. And he said, I said, well, you should make Admiral, young man, with that kind of connection in the United States Coast Guard through NNOA.
And that's one of the things I want to add, Captain Wright, is we have had feedback, that we're not diverse because a huge portion of our membership are African Americans. But I want to say, as somebody that's been in the organization for a very long time, we're a very inclusive organization. Our membership is not defined by the color of the skin of the majority of the members. We're a diverse organization, and we're inviting everybody to come and join us. If you believe in what we're about and you want to accomplish, join us in accomplishing our goal and objectives of recruiting and retaining officers in all three services, please come join us.
Also want to say the length and breadth of the National Naval Officers Association is throughout the entire world. We have chapters all the way out in Japan. We have chapters in the Mediterranean theater and chapters all over the United States of America. And by the way, folks, just go to our website, NNOA, Google it and it'll pop up. And by the way, this podcast and our media presentation on the front page, just click on it. You can find out what's happening with the news, views, perspectives of the National Naval Officers Association. Commander, before I let you go, I want to bring up one name. And in fact, you told me that you took him to Jamaica before he went to naval heaven. And I'm talking about a great African-American admiral, Admiral Tony. Give me your remembrances of Admiral Tony. You took him down to Jamaica before he went to naval heaven. What does that name mean to you on this December 5th, 2020 date?
Where do I begin? Well, Admiral Tony has been around for my entire career, and a lot of the initiatives, a lot of the goals, a lot of what we have accomplished in terms of integration of African-American officers in the Navy, providing opportunities for real meaningful assignments. He was involved in that. He is from this area where I live, Northern California, born and raised in Oakland. When he retired, he was the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce and a very active of the San Francisco Bay Area chapter, which I am a member of out here. He came to our meeting one year and he goes, "Commander McCallaCreary." And I'm like, "Yes, sir. I have a job for I have an assignment for you." I'm like, "Okay. I want to go to Jamaica." He had a family event that Christmas and they put together a bucket list. And he said on the bucket list was a trip to Jamaica. And everybody knew that I was going to Jamaica in the summer and spending a month because I went to a dance program there that I love. That's another hobby, dream that was deferred while I was in the military. But I didn't think he was serious. And I said, well, he goes, "Lieutenant Commander Jim Haskins, who's another longtime member. He was at the Transportation Management School is where I met him, where I was a student as a lieutenant. He's retired and out here." And he goes, "Commander Haskins said, if I want to go to Jamaica, you're the one to take me." And I said, "Yes, I've taken NNOA groups before as a fundraiser, and I could gladly take you, take you or just do another fundraiser." Well, in the end, I did another fundraiser. And it was towards the end of his life. He went, his family was somewhat reluctant to send him at the time because he was getting older and they were concerned about him being able to make the trip successfully. So Jim decided he would be the bodyguard and I was gonna be the tour guide and host. And he went with me and we had a fabulous time. We have pictures to show. A couple other Navy people went, Joyce, her name, she was my executive vice president.
Roger that.
Her last name eludes me at the moment, but we had some NNOA members on the trip. And he came, he had a great time. And then towards the end, when he started to get sick, I will never forget, I took my tape recorder and I went up to the home he was in thinking I would be able to interview him because, you and I had talked about interviewing some of the, the long-term members of NNOA, the legendary members, and he's one of them. And I'll never forget when I got there, it was too late. He was just, he was not in the state that he could be interviewed. So in terms of having, I don't think we have any videotape of his history and all that he accomplished in NNOA and in the Navy in general. But yes, a very great soul. And we have a lot of members like Admiral Tony, who spent their entire times in the career being a mentor, a career counselor, helping people like myself coming up behind them to have successful careers. So yes, he has done that. I put him in the same class as Captain Flowers, some of the other flag officers that have reset the class. What I recall, Captain Wright, is as a lieutenant, we had about maybe 10 or so NNOA senior officers. Captain Penn, Honorable Penn, he was one of them.
Yeah. Funny.
You know what? I better not call names because I'll forget.
Oh yeah, don't worry. Well, in fact, Reuben Wright is our executive director, and we're working on we're going to put together a big historical anthology of the National Naval Officers Association to be screened at our 50th anniversary. We're trying to find the captivation of all of our history at this time. And leading
I think it's important for you to capture the history of what people have done to bring the organization where it is, and also their contribution to the entire Navy to make it a better place for those that are there now on active duty, just to know the history and the challenges of where we were to where we are today. So our
accomplishments have been immense. Commander Denise McCallaCreary, the immediate past president of the National Naval Officers Association, has been our guest today on this edition of This is NNOA, our weekly podcast of the National Naval Officers Association. Oh, yes, I must bring up something before I let you go, Commander Denise McCallaCreary. This coming Thursday at 12 noon, I'm on the advisory committee of the History Makers. Dr. Julianne Richardson, beautiful sister in Chicago, Illinois, started this organization 20 years ago to document the history of the African-American life here in the United States of America. The organization is now 20 years old, and right now what is happening, we have 2020, and every day at 12 noon and 7 o'clock, you can go on the YouTube channel of the History Makers and see this incredible, spectacular program. Now, this coming Thursday at 12 noon, an incredible topic, valor in the face of racism in the United States military, will be presented. And the person basically on the show that day, the guest, will be General Vincent Brooks Jr., the famous Brooks family. In fact, his father was a general, his brother was a general, African-American family of generals, West Point grads, is the guest of the show. And the show will be moderated by Bill Whitaker, CBS's 60 Minutes, great journalist, African-American journalist, will be the moderator. And yours truly, Captain Rick Wright, on the advisory commission, I will be one of the panelists asking questions of General Vincent Brooks. I think Admiral Manson Brown, I think, is also on the show, but we have an advisory committee and we're looking at really the documentation and do justice to all 5 services of the United States military and the African-American story. So that is happening right now. And if you really want to watch some good stuff, the YouTube channel now, The History Makers, and hats off to Dr. Juliana Richardson from the National Naval Officers Association, our board, and the great stories they are doing. And in fact, the Military Advisory Committee is headed up by Colonel Will Gunn, United States Air Force. And Will is a Harvard grad, a lawyer, and he's an incredible, beautiful brother we've been working with and all with the History Makers. So, Commander Denise McCallaCreary, you're an actress, you're a big leader in Jamaican organizations, you have villas in Panama, you're living in luxury in California, and Reuben Wright III considers you his aunt. And you're really having a ball working with Reuben Wright III, who's the executive director of This Is NNOA. Commander Denise McCallaCreary, the immediate past president of the great National Naval Officers Association. It has indeed been a pleasure to have had you on air this afternoon as we document your history for the ages on this edition of This Is NNOA. I'm Captain Rick Wright, United States Navy historian for the National Naval Officers Association, and this program is produced and directed by Roosevelt Reuben Wright III. We'll see you next week with another big guest. And oh, by the way, Dory Miller, our great African-American naval hero of Pearl Harbor, we will be doing a special look at his history also on our NNOA podcast, which will appear on our website. So let's salute Petty Officer Doris Miller, because this coming Monday will be another celebration of Pearl Harbor and remembrance of what he did in becoming the first hero of World War II, young African-American naval petty officer. Commander Denise McCallaCreary, looking forward to talking to you. Let's keep NNOA going and alive. And to Admiral Sinclair Harris, our president, and our executive vice president, Captain Simonia Blanchingame, we want to say bravo Zulu to you, and away we go. Go out and enjoy that good California sun, and we'll be back next week.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity, and have a wonderful day.
Will do. And happy holidays to everybody too.